Welcome to Going Beyond Medicine with Elaine Groman. Conversations with people who are working to make a difference in our world. Now here's your host for Going Beyond Medicine on Empower Radio, Elaine Groman.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Elaine Groman on Empower Radio. And my show, as you know, is called Going Beyond Medicine. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to bring really interesting, amazing people that are making significant changes in our world, in every aspect of our world. So we really need to look beyond just the quick fix. That's why I decided to call the show Going Beyond Medicine, so that we can really look at what do we really need to do in order to help to make our lives work. And my guest today, Dr. Terri Orbuch, is a woman who helps extraordinarily with relationships, in particular with marriage and intimate relationships. And I'm so grateful to have Dr. Terri Orbuch on the show. Good morning, or good afternoon, Terri.
Good afternoon, Elaine. Thanks for having me.
Well, you are known as the Love Doctor.
Yes.
How on earth, right? Sweetheart, did you get that name?
Well, you know, that name was it just evolved. I am really an academic researcher, and I was doing that, and also a marriage and family therapist. And I think I wanted a name or wanted something that was wonderful and positive.
Yes.
So the Love Doctor emerged, and it's been probably 12 or 14 years of that now, Elaine.
Well, you know, it's perfect for you, because having met you in perfect, you just ooze love.
Oh, thank you.
That is really...
Well, you know, love is so important, as you know, Elaine.
Yes.
It really helps us in our everyday lives, in our health and our well-being. And so love is important, and I want or feel that everyone deserves love.
Yes, and I think that what we need to understand, too, Terri, is that we are not deserving of love only. We are love itself. That love is a power within us that is essential for us to begin to understand in a whole different way. Love is not merely an emotion.
Yes,
to call it merely an emotion is actually to diminish its capacity to change the world. So
yes, I love that.
So I really want to get into talking about, you know, all the things that you do. How is it that you got into this particular tract of really looking at relationships? Because I do know that as a therapist and as a professor at Oakland University, and so for those who are listening outside of the United States, Oakland University is in Rochester Hills, Michigan. And as a therapist and then as a researcher, you know, it's easy to have a very different concept when you're in academia, you know, and so that you have expanded beyond academia to be, you know, actually a therapist and working with people, not just studying statistics. So tell us about how you evolved into what it is that you do now, Terri, please.
Well, I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Elaine, and I grew up in a family of therapists, and I was a child who always asked why this, why that. But I was really interested in the whys of relationships. So I started out in academia and continued to do research and teach at Oakland University in Rochester Hills, Michigan. But as I was doing all of this, I became frustrated as an individual because what I was finding out, I've been following these 373 couples now for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And it's a long-term project funded by the National Institutes of Health, but nobody was really reading it, Elaine, except my colleagues in academia. And it was going into scientific journal articles and books, but I felt frustrated, as I said, because I wanted real people to read these findings and gain this knowledge who were having real relationships.
Right.
And I was listening to all of those relationship experts out there in the media who were, I thought, perpetuating myths and common sense notions and sometimes incorrect information. And so I decided about 12 or 14 years ago to translate and make the findings accessible to everyone. And I'm having fun. I'm doing it on radio, TV. I write for a lot of national outlets, and I'm writing popular books as well now then.
Well, I just want to get right into it. Your books are really, really important, because what I think is so important is it brings us home to that relationships don't have to be hard. In fact, if it's hard, there's a problem. And so your book, 5 Simple Steps to Take Your Marriage from Good to Great. Let's talk about that book, because I love even just the titles of your chapters. They're succinct and they help us to understand, oh, you mean we can give a little bit and we can get a little bit?
Right, exactly.
So please, let's talk about that. Talk about your book, The 5 Simple Steps.
Well, I think first it's important to understand that the book is all based on these couples that I've been following for 30 years, and it's on the couples who are happy. What did they do to stay together and stay happy over time? So even though I pepper it with some of, my clients and some of my own personal experiences, it's really science-based. And I love that because it really means that it's true. And these couples, by the way, I should say, Elaine, are representative of all couples in the United States, married couples over time. Mm-hmm. And as you said, the main thing I found that I think is important is that a good relationship doesn't take hard work. It takes instead consistent attention. And so that if we can do little things every day rather than only on Valentine's Day or only on an anniversary, if you do it every single day, just a little bit, a change in a behavior or an attitude, that's what will keep people together over time. And each step is a way to do that. Each chapter is a way to do that.
Well, the thing that's beautiful about Power Radio is it literally is heard all over the world. And I think that we know right now, all we have to do is listen to any radio show or any television newscast, and we see trouble, trouble, trouble. And I think that we really need to help people understand, and that's what you do as your life mission, and that's what I do as my life mission, is to help people understand if we don't heal how we think, then we will never be able to really have peace in our world. So I'd love to have you talk about just your first chapter is so important. Expect less, get more.
Exactly. And what I found, which is contrary to what people think or feel across the world, is that frustration is the main reason why relationships are unhappy over time. And frustration, Elaine, is the difference between what we expect or think should happen and then the reality of our relationships. So what I found is that we all have these should statements in our head, like my partner should be able to read my mind, or we should be able to spend all our leisure time together. And those should statements aren't good for us because we need to live in the present. And if we can have realistic expectations, that's when we feel less frustration, and then we have more happiness over time. Because when we get frustrated and disappointed, it eats away at the happiness in a relationship. So the first chapter is all about making sure that our expectations of relationships are real, and also that we think about what our expectations are for a relationship and we tell our partner. So if I think that I want to spend my leisure time with my partner, I can't just think it in my head. I need to tell my partner, because if my partner doesn't know my expectations, they can't meet them. And they're meeting their own. They've got their own expectations and ideas of what should happen. And so it's really, as an individual, as you said, taking control of his or herself and saying, what do I want and need in a relationship? What are my priorities? And then telling my partner so that they know what's in my head and heart.
That's right. And I think what's so important is we have had a tendency in our world to put such burdens on other people without self-examination. We have to learn that, yes, to be in a partnership is wonderful, but not in a relationship that is dependent upon someone else exclusively for happiness, because that can never happen. The happiness is a choice that we make for ourselves, no matter whether we're by ourselves or we're with, our intimate partner or our family and friends and our spouses, our siblings, our parents, our coworkers. It's you bring who you are to every situation. So, frustrations and expectations, really, we need to have an examination of what does that even mean? What do we expect of ourselves?
Exactly. And I think most of this book is exactly what you said, Elaine. It's really taking an examination of oneself and then coming to the table with your partner. So you don't even need to read this book with your partner. It's really for an individual, and then they take the information and the knowledge to the table of a partner. And for this book, it's for a romantic partner. But as you said, many of these steps, many of the advice that I give is really for being a partner in any kind of relationship.
Yeah, because we have so many varied relationships, and all of our relationships are from our own perspective. We can only see through our own eyes.
Yes.
So when we're looking out and we have expectations of other people, and for whatever reason they don't know or they don't live up to that expectation, it's unfair to hold that other person accountable. We can either say this is working or this isn't working.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Really
and
great.
Instead of blaming one's partner, come to the table with an examination of yourself.
Yeah.
Look within yourself.
That's so great. And then in the second chapter, you have give incentives and rewards. Do and say simple things to keep your partner happy. Talk about that. Talk about that, because I have some questions about that.
Yes. Well, chapter 2 is all about what I call affirmation. It's appreciation. And I think that's so important in relationships of all kinds, but especially a romantic relationship. We all need to feel wanted and noticed and special. And I think what happens, or what I found in a romantic relationship over time, is that at the beginning we do that. We tell our partner, "You're special, I notice you, I see you. You make me happy." But then over time, things get stressful, especially in a marriage, and we attend to everything else, children or work or volunteering, attending to parents, eating well, and we put our relationship on the back burner. And we think to ourselves, I'll get back to that relationship and I'll appreciate that relationship when things settle down, when things get less stressful. And over time, one stressor or one crisis replaces another, and we forget to take that relationship off of the burner. So the happy couples in my study gave regular, almost daily affirmation, and it's a simple thing, Elaine. You say one thing or you do one thing every single day of affirmation to notice your partner, make them feel special, cared for.
Well, of course, as we know from children, infants, there's this diagnosis of failure to thrive. And when I think that can be carried on not just from infancy and childhood, but on into our adult life. But certainly it has to be nurtured and cocooned in those early formative years. And I think that that's maybe a lot of the challenge that people have, is they never really learned how to believe in themselves in their early formative years, and therefore they're pushing and pulling with other people the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. Would you say that that's true?
I think that is true. I think that need or that desire from childhood continues on through adulthood, and that we need to, as you said, give ourselves affirmation, notice ourselves, compliment ourselves, believe in ourselves. But also when we're in relationship, we need to also step out of ourselves and notice each other. Mm-hmm. And I really think it's just a simple thing, saying I love you, saying thank you for being in my life, not only being self-absorbed so that you can know what is meaningful for your partner, special. For example, if you know, Elaine, that they need caffeine in the morning, and you get up before they do, turning on the coffee pot or making coffee because you know when they're going to come down, they need coffee, is such a simple gesture or act that means the world to your partner and says, I notice you. You are in my life. Mm-hmm. And for the couples in my study, for the spouses in my study, that was significantly related to how happy they were and whether or not they stayed together over time. And one of the interesting things also, Elaine, was that men needed it more than women. So when men said, I get affirmation from my wife or from my wife, that couple was 2 times less likely to stay together over time.
Wow.
I'm sorry, it was the opposite. I think I said it the wrong way. When they felt affirmation, they were 2 times more likely to stay together over time.
Okay, yeah. And I think that if we look at the words that we use, to do a kindness, to be kind is to have a kindred spirit. It's the same word, K-I-N-D. Kindred is a kindness that we do. And what we need to recognize is that we're not just doing it for someone else. When we do something for someone else, it's a kindness to ourselves also, because it's an act of love. It's a movement of love from ourselves to another person. A kind act is always begins with the self and then moves outward.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important, those small acts of kindness, not only in our romantic relationships, but in all of them, even what I call acquaintance relationships, which are the people that we see rarely, but we can also have not only a significant impact on those, but ourselves, as you said, as well. So the person who, is the wait staff in a restaurant, or the custodian in our building. We see them once a week, once a month, but a small act of kindness, even for them, will significantly change them, the relationship that we have with them, us, and the world around us.
Absolutely. Again, my guest is Dr. Terri Orbuch, known as the Love Doctor, and she is such an accomplished woman. She's a world-renowned relationship expert, author, speaker, therapist, professor at Oakland University, which is in Michigan, a research scientist, and she has been published widely in the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, USA Today, Women's Health, on and it goes. And I just thank you so much for being so willing, Terri, to really step out in the world and to know in your heart that, as you said earlier in the show, it wasn't just about the researchers speaking and sharing this information with one another, and sometimes sharing kind of a little bit skewed information, just statistical information. How do you actually bring this out into the world to help people live better? And isn't that what it's all about?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we talked about 2 of them. Expect less, get more, give incentives and rewards, and then have daily briefings. I think that's really important, daily briefings. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Absolutely, Elaine. I think most couples, when I ask them, think that they're communicating with one another. But what I found is that what they're really doing is what I call maintenance talk. They're maintaining the relationship. So they're talking about the bills or who's going to do the groceries, pick up the kids, call mom. That's maintenance talk. And if you think about it, that's not communication. Communication is really sharing our dreams and our goals and our aspirations with each other, what we think about the world around us. And so having daily briefings is really doing that real communication. It's asking your partner or talking to your partner about your own dreams, goals, aspirations, ideals, preferences, the things that make us us. And so it's very important to do what I call practice the 10-minute rule for couples every single day. That is at least 10 minutes with your partner talking about something other than these 4 topics, Elaine. Work, family or your children, who's going to do what around the house, or your relationship. So 10 minutes every single day talking about something other than those 4 topics is what I call real communication and what will really significantly impact your relationship.
So say those things again to avoid in those 10 minutes.
Right. You want to avoid talking about, for those 10 minutes, the relationship, work, family or children, or who's going to do what around the house.
So
a lot of people say, Elaine, to me, oh no, what am I going to talk about for those 10 minutes, right? Because that's all they've been talking about. So you can talk about, again, what you would do in 5 years. If you won the lottery, where would you travel to? What's your spiritual view of life and the world around you? Your movie preferences, even religion, politics. There's so much that couples can talk about, but don't. So you want to talk about all of those other things for 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes. It can be a half an hour, or 5 hours, but at least 10 minutes every single day.
I think that's really beautiful. And I think that one of the things that is so helpful is when we start to dream out loud about what are the things that we can do to help the world. You know, to have those big dream conversations, because literally verbalizing what it is that we want to do helps to bring it to fruition, because it's not just something that we can say, oh, I want to do that, oh, I can't do that, in our own little head, you know. And when we talk about these big dreams, then we can actually help to fuel the fire for that other person. Say, yeah, I know you can do that. Oh, you know, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? And it just builds this excitement about what's happening.
Right, and it builds such a bond between you and this other person. I know, Elaine, that I've been married for 24 years, and when my husband and I sat down and talked about what we were most proud of, let's say, doing in the last year, or what we regret not doing in the last year, that really strengthened our relationship and propelled us forward, and really was this, I don't know, this light and positivity that we hadn't really talked about before. And it's so important to share, as you said, those goals, those dreams with a significant other.
And sometimes just being silent with one another says so much, doesn't it? Being silent with one another, sitting out. And I was talking to Nate this morning about how beautiful it is to just sit out in nature with somebody that you really care for and just have the appreciation of life itself.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Doesn't it sound, it sounds peaceful, as you said.
It is. I had the opportunity to do that this weekend, and it was just so wonderful. You know, we rush around with duties that we have to do, and we forget to appreciate that, you know, all of this. Thank God I have grass to mow. You know, thank God I have leaves to rake up. You know, I have the shade, and I have the beautiful sound, and I have the wonderful aromas and all of that. You know, so it's so easy to shift your perspective once you learn how to do it. And I think that what you're doing is so important. So we have just a couple more minutes before we take a break, but I want to talk about the fourth one: implement change. Take risks to reduce boredom and keep things fresh. Yes. Really important. We'll start that one. We might have to catch up on after the break. But
yes, we might have to, because this is such an important one. Boredom really eats away at relationships. Elaine, we love to do the same thing, what we're familiar with, and that's really great. It builds a relationship over time, but we can't forget to shake things up, to add excitement and passion and newness. So I'm all about shaking things up, even though we're attracted to familiarity and what's stable over time. Because if we don't, again, boredom eats away at happiness. And I found that it's okay to do the same thing for a little bit, but over time, again, we need to shake things up. And there are 3 ways that I can talk about later about how to shake things up or add passion to your relationship.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, we're just about ready to take a break. And again, my guest is Dr. Terri Orbuch, known as the Love Doctor. And you can take a look at her wonderful website, and you can look at videos on her website and listen to the things that she talks about. And it's www.drterri, that's DrTerri, thelovedoctor.com. It's all one word, Dr. Terri, thelovedoctor.com. And I would really encourage my listeners to take a listen to what she's talking about, because we really need to learn how to change our viewpoint about ourselves so that we can be happier in any relationship we have, because life is about relationships after all. I'm Elaine Groman. This is Going Beyond Medicine on Empower Radio. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes to continue our conversation with Dr. Terri Orbuch.
I'm home and I love it. I'm home where I belong. I'm home and I love it. I'm home where I belong.
It's always nice to come home. But these days, many Americans are at risk of foreclosure and losing their homes. Fortunately, help is available. Making Home Affordable is a free program from the U.S. government that has already helped over 1 million struggling homeowners, and we want to help you.
I'm home, and I love it. I'm home.
Find out now what your options are. Go to makinghomeaffordable.gov or call 1-888-995-HOPE. The sooner you act, the better chance we can help you.
I'm home, where I belong.
Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away. A place where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit.
I saw lizards and squirrels and ducks, ladybugs, caterpillars. It's really cool, actually.
A place where you don't have to make time for free time.
Lots and lots of kinds of species here.
Out here, you may even meet the mysterious creature known as the other you, the enchanted you.
It's magic what flowers do.
The adventurous you.
My favorite tree, yes, that one.
The free to be me you. Ask your parents to take you to this not so far away place. Come to the forest, where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org, a public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Hey, Larry, mind if I sit down?
Nope.
This coffee tastes like coffee. So what's going on?
Not much.
What's new?
Not much.
Okay, but can you please put the newspaper down while you say not much?
What newspaper?
This newspaper. Oh, dude. What happened to your face? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Ow.
7. Dude, what is this? 11 pieces of toilet paper stuck to your face?
I'm shaving in the dark to save energy. I'm helping the environment.
That's a dangerous way to help the environment.
Well, sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself for the greater good.
Dude, there's an easier and safer way to help the environment without sacrificing yourself. Go green, go public. Take public transportation. It's good for the environment and you won't have to live behind a newspaper.
Wow.
But for now, put the newspaper back up.
A message from the public transportation systems across the country. To learn more, visit publictransportation.org.
Now back to Elaine Groman and Going Beyond Medicine on Empower Radio. EmpowerRadio.com.
Welcome back. This is Elaine Groman on Going Beyond Medicine on Empower Radio. And I'm so delighted to be continuing my discussion with Dr. Terri Orbuch, who is known as the Love Doctor. And she is just an extraordinary woman. We're talking about her book, The 5 Simple Steps to Take Your Marriage from Good to Great, which is her second book, I believe. But she is really working tirelessly, but joyfully, I might say, to help to bring people a greater understanding of how to change their relationships. And she writes for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, USA Today, just unbelievable variety. And you can see her also on public television. She has a special entitled Secrets from the Love Doctor, which has been airing since December of 2013. And you can take a look at her website, which is www.drterri, DRTERRI, thelovedoctor.com. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Terri.
Thanks, Elaine. Great to be here.
Thank you. When we in the last segment, we ended with the implementing change and taking risks to reduce boredom and keep things fresh. And you were going to tell us about the 3 ways to shake things up in a relationship, particularly in a marriage.
Yes, because the number one question I get from people in relationships is, how do I make it more exciting? Or, the excitement has died down. How do I change things? And there are 3 ways. It's really all about thinking when you first met your partner, Elaine. What did you have at that time? And what we find is that newness, mystery, and arousal increase passion and excitement in a relationship. So now, over time, first, you want to add anything that can bring something new to your relationship. So you can do a new activity with your partner, like you can take a salsa dance class or take Spanish together, start a new athletic endeavor, or you can go to a new vacation spot or a new restaurant with each other. Anything new that you do with your partner will increase the passion and excitement because newness fuels excitement.
True.
Second, do anything that's different or mysterious with your partner. So you may think that you know your partner over time because you've been with each other, 5, 10, even 25, 50 years. But if you can ask a new question to get new information, or you can do something different, that will surprise your partner. Again, that will fuel the passion and the excitement. And the third way, which is my favorite, Elaine, is what I call an arousal-producing activity. And it's clean. It has nothing actually to do with sexuality. But if you do an activity with your partner that creates arousal or an adrenaline rush, like exercising together, going to an amusement park and riding a roller coaster ride, going to a comedy club, or even parachuting out of a plane, the arousal that's produced through that other activity will get transferred to you and your partner, which will, again, fuel the passion and fuel the excitement.
Terri, let me ask you, how do you help couples that have been together for a long time that, for whatever reason, due to illness or to an accident or an injury or a challenge of some kind, that vitality of the partner is just not there? What do you do to help people so that they can still have these happy, healthy relationships, even though they have changed significantly?
Well, I think that there are many ways that you can bond with your partner. First, I encourage couples to strengthen the emotional bond. And that really is about communication and sharing dreams and thoughts and aspirations and fears and concerns with your partner. And when you share and reveal those personal parts of you, and your partner does the same, you strengthen the emotional bond, which is so important over time, regardless of the vitality and the physical energy of you or your partner. And then, second, Elaine, I encourage spouses or couples to recalibrate the activities that they do with one another. So if you used to play tennis or hike, mountains or bike with your partner, you change or recalibrate the activities that you can do. And you may be able to walk around a mall or your block. You may be able to walk from upstairs to downstairs with each other, but you recalibrate the activities that you can do with each other. And one of the things I learned from my couples over time is that it's okay to have time to yourself, that me time is so very important. So if if one partner is not able to do what the other partner can do physically, energy-wise, it's okay. And in fact, it improves a relationship if the other partner does something different or has me time.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And because also, I think people have a tendency to fantasize that someone is going to stay the same way. Well, somebody who was robust when they were younger and are not so much the same, we are all aging. And we all have to make accommodations, but that to accommodate, to get older doesn't not mean that you're giving up. In fact, you actually can be freer in so many ways that you weren't when you were, had little babies to take care of and, busy households and all of that stuff. You're free in a different way.
And I think our society, Elaine, says that change is negative. And I think actually we need to switch that approach. Change is positive. And just because you can't do what you did yesterday or 5, 10, 50 years ago, that doesn't mean that you're at a disadvantage or it's negative in the present.
Right.
Instead of looking at weakness as bad, we should look at it as an opportunity. What can we now do differently? And that's good.
Yeah, because other strengths can come forward, right? Yeah, other strengths come forward.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And as you said, change is what we're here to do. Change is an inevitability. We are constantly changing and evolving beings. We're not the same person we were even yesterday, because we're having new experiences constantly. And that's hopefully adding to the richness of who we are.
And actually, in my study, change produces excitement, positivity, greater happiness, and you're more likely to stay with your partner over time if you can see change as good rather than negative.
Right. Again, my guest is Dr. Terri Orbuch, and she's known as the Love Doctor, and we're talking about her recent book, 5 Simple Steps to Take Your Marriage from Good to Great. And I want you to let my listeners know that her book is available on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook version. So just go to Amazon.com, type in the 5 Simple Steps to Take Your Marriage from Good to Great or Dr. Terri Orbuch, and it's going to pop right up. So it's so easy. You just order it and it's right there for you. And I want to talk to you about the last thing that is so important, the 5 simple steps. Keep costs down and benefits high. And I think that this is the challenge, and I'm sure you would agree with me, Dr. Terri, is that, we have to learn how to weed out what doesn't work instead of holding it as something that we're perpetually accountable for or accountable to. And when we don't know how to let go of regrets, then we poison ourselves. We poison our thinking, and that's where we have regrets and that kind of thing, as you were speaking about earlier. Can you talk about that incredibly important thing, keeping costs low and benefits high?
Yes, incredibly important, Elaine. Well, first I should say that the first 4 chapters are all about adding positivity to your relationship. And I did that on purpose because when you add positivity and you strengthen what's already going well in your relationship, then you can look at the costs differently. You can look at the problems differently, and you're more likely, as you said, Elaine, to let them go or work on them to eliminate them. So I want to tell listeners that first, before you get to the problems, add positivity, strengthen what's already going well, because it will change your outlook on your relationship. It will propel you forward. That positivity and optimism will rub off on your partner, and then working on these costs change, and you're much more able and likely to be able to work on them. Mm-hmm. So now, what are those costs? First, I should say also that you want to keep costs low. You always want to have more positives in your relationship than negatives. But in Chapter 5, I talk about some of the costs that plague or are in relationships over time. For example, conflict. We know that conflict is inevitable in all relationships, Elaine. And so it's not a relationship that's good that has no conflict. A relationship is good when it does have conflict, and the partners are able to deal with the conflict well or respectfully. So it's all about being able to fight fair with your partner, not eliminating all conflict. And so Chapter 5 talks about how to fight fair with your partner, because that's so important over time. Because when you think about it, you can't agree on everything with your partner. You're going to have fights, conflict, disagreements. You come from different families and backgrounds, neighborhoods. You come to the table as two different people, and it's how you merge those differences that turns out to be important in the long run.
That's right. And I think that sometimes we have to even be very careful with our languages, to have a conference, or I'm going to call it a conference instead of calling it a conflict. Call it a conference. How are you going to begin to look at things differently so that we can see the perspective through which the other person is viewing their life? Because we get so territorial, don't we, Dr. Terri? We get so territorial in owning our beliefs as if that's the only belief that has validity. And often our beliefs are very skewed. So, and a belief, all a belief is just something that you've thought over and over and over and over again. Doesn't make it a reality or a truth. It just is a commonality of experience. And so when we can learn how to recognize that sometimes what we perceive is normal isn't normal at all. It's just common. And so then we can create common ground. We can create a common ground that...
Yes, and I think taking the perspective of the other partner and really trying to understand what they feel, think, or are experiencing is so important in relationships, as well as being prepared to compromise. Another thing in our society that I think we've been taught to feel negatively about is compromise. And compromise doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't mean I'm just falling and doing whatever you want me to do. It can mean that we come to the middle. It can mean that we think outside the box and we do something crazy and different. So compromise and being willing to compromise, which really is what you said, Elaine, stepping out of our box, our beliefs, and seeing our partner, seeing their perspective, or seeing the world in a different light is so important in relationships.
And this information and your books that you're sharing and everything that you're talking about, Dr. Terri, it seems to me is what we really need to look at is, since families are fundamentally begun with a married couple, then we recognize if the parents, if the married couple are happy together, then the children that they bring into the world are going to witness healthy relationships that are not domineering one over the other, are not slighting one over the other, but are really learning how to be people, really learning how to be people. And I think that we don't have to do anything, but we have an opportunity to look at things fundamentally different, as if, no marriage is perfect. No person is perfect, but we have an opportunity to make a more perfect world by the way we are.
Absolutely. Elaine, my next book actually is
I'm so
on
excited.
that topic.
It is. Very good. Please tell us about that.
Thank you.
Geez, I didn't even, there's my intuitive self coming out.
That was good. You were reading my mind. Exactly. It's all about, if we are parents, that we have a responsibility to do healthy behaviors in our own relationships. And I say relationships, not only our significant other relationship, but in all of our relationships, so that we model these healthy behaviors for our children. And not only our children, but children all over in the world. And that when we model these healthy relationships, the children of the world will pick those up and then enact them in their relationships. And that if we don't model it, if we don't take responsibility for our healthy behaviors in our relationships, then our children can't see it. They can't observe it. And so it's all about modeling and talking about healthy relationships for the children of the world.
Yes, and I always have to credit one of my dear friends, Mary Ellen Woji, who helped me to reframe looking at the word responsibility. Because responsibility, when we just hear that word, we think of duty, task, something that we're obligated to do. But if we separate the word responsibility, what is our ability to respond? Rather than responsibility like this heavy duty that we have, then we can kind of take a step back and say, oh, gee, what am I capable of doing here? Or what am I capable of stepping away from because it's not mine to interact with? And then that unnecessary burden of responsibility becomes our responsibility, and it has so much more forward momentum to it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like changing how we see words.
Well, words are so
wonderful.
essential. I'm very privileged to have one of my mentors who is a linguist, a consummate linguist, who not only is a linguist, but speaks 7 languages fluently. And
wow.
in that, we don't know our words. We really don't. And I think that is a fundamental crux of language and relationships. If we don't understand how to say what we mean, if we first don't know how to articulate what we mean, then words are going to tumble out of our being that we wish we hadn't said, and so many, I'm sure you've had so many relationships that you've tried to help people see, is when we say what we wish we hadn't, then, we can't take those words back. And the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is the biggest fib to humanity. Words, you break my bones, just don't break my heart.
Right. And miscommunication. That's really miscommunication when we intend to give one message and someone else picks up on a different message. So we have to really be conscious and try to clearly say what we mean. And just as important, I think, Elaine, is that our nonverbal behaviors coincide with that message. So we may try to find the words to clearly say what we mean, but we also need to make sure that our body language and our facial expression all match that message as well. And so what I've learned over time is that we need to be aware of both the words and the body language and have them be consistent with the message that we want to give other people or our partner over time.
Well, and what we forget is our body language is instinctual, so that always precipitates what we say, so whether it's a tiny little grimace or a rolling of the eyes, sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it unless it's exaggerated. So we have to really study, what do we actually feel so that we do have a match with what comes out of our mouths.
And, important also is that if there's a discrepancy between the nonverbal and the verbal or the words, most people rely on the nonverbal. So you can say to someone, I love you, you're wonderful, you're great, you make my life exciting. But if you have that facial expression or if your fists are balled up and you are looking like you don't like or love that person is going to read the non-love and the non-like.
Oh, yeah. The old adage, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when is your new book coming out?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm almost done. I'm writing the conclusion of the book, and so it still needs to get into a publisher's hands and then out. But it is almost complete, and I've had such a great time writing it, not only looking at my couples over time in that 30-year so far long-term study, but I also did another worldwide study online of parents. And so I'm using both of those studies and findings to implement and to translate into this book.
Tell us about the study with the parents, because there's so many children in our world that have been so traumatized by what they see and what they hear.
Well, I did a study online of parents across the world, and I had it on my website, and most people that responded were parents, and were trying to show their kids something different than they learned from our parents, because the majority of these parents said that they didn't have conversations with their own parents about healthy relationships, how to have healthy relationships, what to look for in a partner, or what are the important qualities of a good relationship. And so they observed their own parents' behaviors, parents' relationships that worked or didn't work, stayed together or didn't stay together, or weren't even, in a traditional sense together. But they observed those relationships and learned things that were what they wanted to learn or not, or felt that they needed to let go of or hold on to. But we're trying to change their own behaviors and the way that they talk to their own children. And so it was fascinating to learn, as you said, what they learned from their parents and how they learned those lessons or things or factors that determine a healthy relationship, as well as how they were teaching or modeling healthy behaviors in their relationships for their kids.
Wonderful. Well, we just have about 5 minutes left. And again, my guest is Dr. Terri Orbuch, the Love Doctor. And I would really encourage you to take a look, my listeners, to her website is www.Terri, Terri, thelovedoctor.com. It is full of all kinds of information. You can certainly get her books on Amazon. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your other book, Finding Love Again, 6 Simple Steps to a New and Happy Relationship. Can we talk a little bit about that book? Was that your first book?
That actually is my first book, and it's on the divorced and widowed individuals in this long-term study. So 46% of the couples divorced over time, which is exactly the national U.S. average. In the 1980s, the divorce rate was 66%. In the 90s, it was 50%. And then in 2013, it's 45%. So 46% of my couples, I call them my couples, divorced over time. But I continued to follow those divorced individuals and looked at what they regretted not doing in that first marriage, whether they repartnered or remarried, and what are the factors that led to a repartnership. I should say that 71% of the people who got divorced over time repartnered. And so I think that's a really good statistic. It is possible. There is hope for your listeners out there who have experienced a divorce over time. And so that book, Finding Love Again, is all on what are the factors that lead to a repartnership. And the first 4 steps are all about the individual again. What does the individual do? And what does the individual need to re-examine and reframe in order to be confident and empowered to find love again?
And what about those people that maybe have lost a spouse due to injury or trauma or illness?
And that book is also for people who have lost a spouse to death, or partner. So the first 4 steps are based on looking at yourself and what you can do. And then the last 2 steps are looking at then how do you go out into the world as a new, empowered, renewed individual individual. So whether you've experienced divorce, the breakup of a long-term relationship, or the death of a partner, Finding Love Again, 6 Simple Steps to a New and Happy Relationship is the book for you.
And I think that's so beautiful because it's so important when we recognize that when something has changed, either the death of a spouse, the end of a marriage, whatever it happens to be, what have you learned and what can you bring that forward as something that's going to help to benefit your life, not as a constant refrain about how woe is me, what has happened to me. And we need to, I think if we look globally, Terri, that we see that that is something that we need to learn. We need to learn how to rethink the most fundamental thing in our life, which is relationships. And without relationships, we don't know who we are. Without relationships, we don't have communities, we don't have families, we don't have countries. We don't have this beautiful globe that of community, literally a global community. So I really want to thank you, Terri, for taking the time to be on the show. I know how busy you are. And please, listeners, if you did not have a chance to listen to this show, it airs on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. But after it airs, it's available as a podcast anytime on Empower Radio. So just go to www.empowerradio, look under shows, go to Going Beyond Medicine, and you can look at all the wonderful interviews that we've had, including this one with Dr. Terri Orbuch. Again, my guest, Dr. Terri Orbuch, please take a look at her website, Dr. Terri, Terri, thelovedoctor.com, and look at all the wonderful ways in which you can begin to change your life by changing the way you view yourself and the relationships that you're in that are so fundamental to life. Thank you so much, Dr. Terri, for your time and for your expertise.